Welcome back to TESS'S Cryptids. This week we're off to East Africa to investigate the Nandi bear. Is it a real predator, a case of mistaken identity, or just a myth?
This one is really fascinating
Yeah.
because the Nandi bear legend is so deeply rooted in Kenyan culture. It's not just some fleeting cryptid story, It's actually woven into the fabric of life for the Nandi people.
Okay, so that already tells us that this isn't some recent internet hoax. This thing has some serious history behind it.
Oh, yeah.
What can you tell us about its origins?
Well, as you might guess, the creature takes its name from the Nandi people of Kenya. They've been telling stories about this fearsome beast for generations. And what's really intriguing is that the descriptions and stories are incredibly consistent.
So it's not just a bunch of random one-off sightings. People seem to have a very specific idea of what this creature is.
Exactly, and it goes even deeper than that. The Nandi bear has other names, too. Chimosit, Carrot, Kadolo, Ngoloko, Duba. Some of these names actually connect to Arabic words for bear and hyena, which gives us a little clue about how people were trying to make sense of this creature.
That's fascinating. It's like they were trying to fit it into categories they already understood, even though it didn't quite match up. So what exactly were they describing? Give us the rundown.
So imagine a powerful carnivore standing over 4 feet tall at the shoulder with a sloping back, like a hyena.
Okay.
That image seems pretty consistent in most accounts, and it gets even more specific. Some reports claim it stands on its hind legs, almost like a bear, while others describe it scalping its victims, which is definitely more hyena-like behavior.
Okay, I'm starting to see the contradictions here. It's like a Frankenstein's monster of animal characteristics. And that makes me wonder, why all these different elements? Was there something truly unique about its appearance that people struggled to describe?
That's a great question. And it's one that has puzzled researchers for a long time. Take, for example, Charles William Hobley, a British colonial administrator and anthropologist who studied the Nandi people in the early 20th century. He even sketched the diagram of the Nandi bear's footprint in 1913, trying to make sense of the creature.
Wow, they were really taking this seriously. But if sightings were so frequent in the 19th and early 20th centuries, you'd think someone would have caught one, or at least gotten a clear photo,
Right.
you know?
There's a quote from Gardner Soule in 1961 that sums it up perfectly. He said, "It never has been caught or identified." And that really gets to the heart of this mystery. Why, with all these reported encounters, has there never been any concrete evidence?
So we're left with eyewitness accounts and a whole lot of questions.
Yeah.
But something I find really interesting is that sightings seem to have decreased over time.
Mm.
Why do you think that is? Is the Nandi bear simply gone, or is there something else going on?
That's a question with a lot of potential answers. But before we jump to conclusions, let's address the big elephant in the room. From a purely scientific perspective, there's no concrete evidence to support the existence of the Nandi bear.
Ouch, that's got to be a blow to any Nandi bear enthusiasts out there. But you're not ruling out the possibility completely, right?
No, of course not.
There has to be some reason why these stories persist.
Of course. And honestly, that's what makes this case so compelling. The lack of physical evidence doesn't automatically discredit the experiences and beliefs of the Nandi people. It just means we need to explore other explanations.
So where do we go from here? If we're not just dismissing the Nandi bear outright, what are some of the alternative theories that try to explain these sightings?
Well, the most common and perhaps the simplest explanation is misidentification. Could it be that people were mistaking known animals for something more exotic and frightening?
Oh, okay. Let's play detective here. Which animals are the most likely suspects in this case of mistaken identity? And why would people confuse them for something as monstrous as the Nandi bear?
Well, one of the leading contenders is the spotted hyena. Zoologist Reginald Innes Pocock was a big proponent of this theory, and even the British Natural History Museum agreed, suggesting that many Nandi bear reports were likely just sightings of spotted hyenas.
That makes a lot of sense to me. They have that distinctive sloping back, they're nocturnal, and let's be honest, they've got a pretty scary reputation. Those powerful jaws and bone-crunching habits could easily be exaggerated into stories of scalping, couldn't they?
Exactly. But hyenas aren't the only suspects. Paleontologist George Gaylord Simpson proposed another interesting possibility, the honey badger.
Hold on, the honey badger, that little guy. I know they're fearless, but a Nandi bear.
Don't underestimate the honey badger. They're incredibly strong for their size, known to attack animals much larger than themselves and have this relentless, fearless attitude that aligns with some Nandi bear descriptions. Imagine a honey badger encounter in the dead of night. It's not hard to see how a startled person might perceive it as something much larger and more menacing.
Okay, I'm seeing how a honey badger could be misidentified, especially in the right circumstances. But what about explanations that go beyond misidentification? Are there any theories that embrace the idea of the Nandi bear as a truly unknown creature?
There are, and some of them are pretty wild. One theory that has captured the imaginations of many cryptozoologists is the idea that the Nandi bear could be a surviving Chalicother.
Now, I remember reading about Chalictothers. They were this bizarre group of extinct herbivores, some of which resembled giant gorillas with claw-like hooves. Am I picturing that right?
You're spot on. It's a fascinating image, and you can see how someone might connect those clawed hooves to the Nandi bear's ferocity. However, there's a pretty big flaw in this theory.
Let me guess. Chalicothers were herbivores, which doesn't exactly match up with the Nandi bear's carnivorous reputation.
Right. And paleontologist Louis L. Jacobs pointed this out back in 2000, adding that if Chalicothers were still roaming around, we'd likely have found fossil evidence by now. He also dismissed the idea of the Nandi bear being an extinct anthropoid ape, which was another theory proposed in the early 1900s.
So much for those exciting possibilities. But wait, didn't Jacob suggest a different, more grounded explanation for the Nandi bear legend? Something to do with gorillas?
He did, and it's a clever idea. Jacobs proposed that the legend might have originated from distorted descriptions of gorillas passed down through generations. Think about it, if people traveled from areas with gorilla populations back to the Nandi lands, their stories of these large, powerful primates could easily become embellished and transformed over time.
It's like a giant game of telephone, but with terrifying gorillas instead of whispered phrases. It highlights how our perceptions and fears can shape the way we interpret the unknown, doesn't it?
Absolutely, and that's why the Nandi bear, even if it's not a literal creature, is so valuable from a cultural and psychological standpoint. It reveals how humans interact with the world around them, how stories evolve, and how the fear of the unknown can manifest in powerful ways.
So even if the Nandi bear itself isn't real, its legend tells us something very real about human nature and our relationship with the natural world. But before we get too philosophical, let's not forget that this creature has also made quite an impact on popular culture.
You're right. The Nandi bear has captured the imaginations of writers, game designers, and comic book artists, popping up in all sorts of unexpected places. For instance, remember those fighting fantasy game books? Those choose-your-own-adventure books where you could easily end up meeting a gruesome end? Well, the Nandi bear made an appearance as a formidable foe in one of those books.
Oh, I loved those books. I spent countless hours exploring fantastical worlds and making questionable decisions that usually led to my character's demise. It's pretty cool to think that a creature rooted in Kenyan folklore made its way into a popular game book series. It shows the wide reach of these legends.
And the Nandi bear's influence doesn't stop there. It even popped up in a Tarzan comic back in the 1960s.
Wait, Tarzan fought a Nandi bear? That's amazing. I've got to track down those comics.
It seems that whether it's books, games, or comics, the Nandi bear has this undeniable ability to capture our imaginations and inspire creativity.
It makes you wonder, even if we ultimately conclude that the Nandi bear isn't a real creature, does its cultural impact and influence on storytelling make it real in a different sense?
That's a fantastic question, and it's one that I think gets to the heart of why we're so fascinated by cryptids. They blur the lines between reality and myth, forcing us to confront the limits of our knowledge and the power of our imaginations. But before we get too lost in that thought, let's come back to the core question. What's the verdict on the Nandi bear? Real, misidentified, or pure legend?
It really is a tough call. I have to admit I'm torn. Part of me wants to believe there's something truly unique out there lurking in the shadows, defying our attempts to explain it. But the skeptic in me can't help but lean towards the misidentification theory. Those honey badgers are sneaky little devils.
They are indeed. But what if we're approaching this from the wrong angle? What if the decrease in Nandi bear sightings isn't due to extinction or misidentification, but rather a change in behavior or habitat?
Ooh, I like where you're going with this. You're saying maybe the Nandi bear is still out there, but it's adapted in a way that makes it harder for us to find.
Exactly. Think about it. If the Nandi bear is a real animal, it would have to be incredibly adaptable to survive for so long, especially with increasing human encroachment on its habitat. Maybe it's become more nocturnal, more elusive, more adept at avoiding human contact.
And that makes a lot of sense.
Right.
It's like the saying goes, the best way to survive is to not be seen.
Precisely. And it raises another intriguing possibility. What if the Nandi bear isn't a single, easily defined creature, but rather a collective term for several different elusive animals that share certain characteristics?
Whoa, that's a mind-blowing thought. So maybe what we've been calling the Nandi bear is actually a composite, a blend of sightings of various rare or nocturnal animals that when combined create this image of a monstrous creature.
It's definitely something to consider. And it reminds us that our understanding of the natural world is constantly evolving. There are still vast areas of wilderness out there teeming with life that we may not fully comprehend.
So the mystery of the Nandi bear remains open. And honestly, I kind of like it that way. It's a reminder that there's still wonder and a sense of the unknown left in the world.
Absolutely. It's a call for us to keep exploring, to keep asking questions, and to keep an open mind about the possibilities that lie beyond our current understanding.
And maybe, just maybe, someday, someone will capture that elusive piece of evidence that finally solves the riddle of the Nandi bear.
Until then, the stories, the sightings, and the legends will continue to fuel our imaginations and inspire us to look a little closer at the world around us, wondering what else might be out there, hidden in plain sight.
Well said. So to all our listeners out there, the next time you're venturing out into the wilderness, or even just walking through a park at night, keep your eyes peeled. You never know what you might encounter. And if you have any thoughts or theories about the Nandi bear, we'd love to hear them. Until next time, happy cryptid hunting.